Hello, everyone. Welcome to this special Independence Day live and book chat where we're going to chat about various things, but primarily we've come together to talk about Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove, but we will, of course, talk about other things. I want to introduce you to Shelley, Shelley Swearingen from her channel, Shelley Swearingen. If you haven't subscribed to her, please do so. Her link, of course, is down below. Shelley, how are you?
Good. How are you, Mark?
Pretty good. It's
Yeah.
summer holidays. It's a Tuesday, and I'm sitting here not doing very much, so that's nice.
Yeah, that's really nice. I
You're
know
on
you
summer
took.
holidays as well, right?
I am, but I've been on summer holiday for at least 3 weeks. So we went way earlier than you all.
There we go. That's better, isn't it? Yeah, I always think it looks better this way. Although I look like a midget, you must be sitting on some kind of stool.
No, I'm sitting on a bed, but like it's a makeshift operation over here. But my computer is on a box. So
It's very quiet there. Usually, I'm hearing children and whatever running around.
I think my husband must have them, like silenced out in the background.
Bound and gagged.
Yes, pretty much. So,
So yeah. So I mean, it's obviously it's a holiday. I say holiday weekend, but of course it isn't, is it? It's
mm-mm.
Tuesday. Are you guys doing anything? I was surprised that you could do a live because I thought it's probably a big day there. I thought you'd be out like barbecuing and setting off explosions and that kind of stuff. Are you not?
Well, maybe later. Maybe later that will happen. I have my parents in town, and they're visiting another sibling right now, and so we don't have anyone in the house at the moment. We're having this like interim in between. And so like now that no one's here, we're like, oh, let's just relax and do nothing. So yeah, but it's fun. It's fun. Oh,
Yeah.
look we have people in the
We
comments. I
do. We
didn't
have a couple
know.
here, and we can bring them up. So hi, Chris.
That's awesome. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Gola.
Hi, Cole.
And we have Sean. Hey, Sean.
Sean. Hi, Sean. That's
Sean, I
awesome.
saw your latest update. So things look like they're moving. That's good. I don't know if you've seen Sean's latest problems, but he has to move house. And of course, he's got, I don't know, 6,000 books that he has to move. And, he needs kind of help with it, really, because, he's kind of housebound and stuff. So, yeah, it's a big task. I keep looking around at my rather small collection of books, thinking about when I have to move, hopefully next year. Wondering how I'm going to do it. So I can't imagine what it's like. With have you ever counted the number of books you actually have, Shelley?
I have. I had at the time like 960 books. Around there. And then I know that I've acquired some, but I've also gotten rid of several. So I don't know where I'm at right now. And that was about 8 months ago, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing how they kind of just, creep up and up, don't they, when you kind of acquire more and more books. I have to say I haven't gotten rid of any, so mine just go up because I'm loath to get rid of them because it's such an ordeal to get them in the first place. I wouldn't mind possibly like lending them out to people that I know, but I'm quite loath to give them up because I have to pretty much get everything new anyway. So yeah,
didn't you still have that Dan Brown book when you were on my channel? You had Dan Brown's book.
Yeah.
And you were holding it for a friend.
Well, no. I could get rid of those. That's not going to be a problem actually. But they're not mine though. To be honest, they've been.
I know, but I was thinking when you can get rid of them, and when you have no emotional attachment, you come up with a different reason, like there's someone else's.
Honestly, I don't have a problem seriously getting rid of those. That wouldn't be an issue.
Okay.
And if the person doesn't reclaim them by the time I move, I have the perfect location for them because we do have like a little free library in the village that I'll be moving to, which is in the bus stop. Yeah, they've turned it into a nice little free library space with a reading area and all this kind of stuff. So it's kind of cool. And there aren't any. I think there is one English book in there, and it's a dictionary from the 1960s, and that's about it. So it could do with some Dan Brown if people are desperate enough.
I was gonna be like, make someone else suffer through that.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe. I don't know, but yeah, as you know, I'm not a big fan.
Yeah,
So,
I know. And and to be honest, I've heard you're not the only one, that I've heard about the atrociousness of those books. And so, I mean, I see them all the time. I could pick them up at any point. I'm always like, no, I'm good.
but it's kind of funny that you see them all the time, right? Because
Yeah,
people are trying, they can't even give them away, right?
right,
You know,
right. They're like, I read the first one, but I bought all three or something, and then they're like, and I'm just donating the set. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Mm. Yeah, it's a shame because when I first read it, when I first read what was it, Da Vinci Code, I was like, yeah,
Mhm.
that's a bit of fun, it's all right. And then kind of just one of those things. The more I thought about it, the more I got into it. I'm like, actually, no, this is pretty bad. So
I know sometimes in the moment when you read something really terrible, I think it doesn't really settle in like how wasteful it was of your time. And then when you look back, you're like, oh my gosh, that was so terrible. Like it was
yeah,
so bad. So,
yeah. I mean, it is amazing how some of these people do become so popular as well, though, as writers. And I I don't I don't know. I mean, but it was a phenomenon when it came out. I don't know if you probably, I don't know. You're too young to remember it. Maybe it was like early 2000, I think, end of the 90s.
I do remember it being big, but I don't think I was the target age group to be
Mm,
reading it. And
mm.
the movie came out, but at that point, it already the books had this long moment which I had missed because of my age, and then I was like, I don't really care if I saw it or not. So I really kind of missed the whole thing, but I think it was an age thing probably.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely an adult when it came out, and I just remember everybody reading it. It was like Harry Potter as well. Like I remember
Yeah.
all these adults sitting on the train and stuff to London, reading Harry Potter, and I used to be like, "Look at these idiots," reading children's books, blah blah ha ha ha. And then like a few years later, when I was teaching in Japan, one of my students, this 16-year-old girl, she came up to me and she said, Mark, I'd really love to read the Harry Potter books in English. And I was like, oh, okay, good for you. Yeah, why not? And she said, but could you help me? And I was like, yeah. So she said, if I give you the first book, will you read it? And then we can go through. I was like, oh, really? Okay, all right then. So she gave it to me, and it was like, week goes by. Have you read it yet? I'm like, oh no, sorry. Something came up. I haven't yet, but don't worry, I will. And then it was like I sat there one day. I said, oh, Mark, you've got to stop being such a what's it? Come on, read it. So I sat down. And I was like, oh, all right, it's pretty good. And then, like, literally the next weekend, I said to myself, right, this is it. I have to go. And I bought like the express train ticket to the second biggest city on Hokkaido. Went to the bookshop there and bought all the ones that had been out because
Oh
I
my
just kind of
god.
thought this is awesome. And then I was living
Wow.
in Hong Kong when the last one came out, and I was working on the day it came out. And I said to one of my colleagues, because she started after me, like later in the day, and she said she was
Mhm.
going shopping. I said, "Oh, can you get me a copy of the Deadly Hallows, please?"
Oh my gosh,
I
that's
loved it.
fantastic.
I I really like them. I have to say,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with Harry Potter at all. And I think, okay, you can argue about how well written they are or whatever, but they got a whole generation of kids into reading, and that's a positive. So,
Yes. That was those were the target age group for me growing up. So I was like exactly Harry's age as he aged, and that definitely gives away my age. But as he aged in Hogwarts, like when he was 11, I was 11. When he was 12, I was 12. So whenever the next book came out, I was his age. So I was like right there, in and amongst it. But I didn't read the last book until I was an adult, and then I've tried to go back and read them. I can't. Like there's just something about it. Like I just see all of it that doesn't have the magic of being a kid anymore, and I'm like, "Ugh,
mhm.
ugh," but I don't know, maybe one day.
Yeah, I didn't get that, but something did strike me with them, and I even enjoyed watching the films as well. I went to the cinema, I think, even to watch the last one,
Did you?
the last one too. That they filmed. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. So it was like
yeah.
me and a load of kids, It's just sitting there. This is great. So,
I know what I haven't seen all the movies though, and I think I don't know. I feel like a bad American or something like because like there's a lot of nostalgia over here about those films, but I haven't seen them all. I feel like I'm not a good reader or something.
they're a bit of fun.
Yeah,
People
they are.
obviously hear like Sean saying there are three of them.
Mm.
I think you
Oh, the
mean
Da Vinci Codes.
Dan Brown books, yeah.
Yeah,
And then Chris is saying maybe five of them, and of course that's extra horror, isn't it? That he would have done five of them.
of
But
course. He was just getting that paycheck, you know. He was
yeah.
trying to make a living, entertaining the masses.
Well, now look, we read something recently together.
We
We'll
did.
talk about this for a little bit. Now, people might not want to hang around, but we're not going to talk about it for the whole time, and there may be spoilers because I have to say, I find it pretty hard to talk about some of the things without maybe giving some things away. But I think it's one of those books that so many people have read that it doesn't really matter. You know, people who've read it probably will stick around. If you haven't, you might want to disappear. And we're going to talk about Larry McMurtry's Lonesome Dove
Lonesome
for a little
Dove.
bit,
Mm-hmm.
which is a wonderful book. But I have a problem, or I have an issue, I think, Shelley, which is like, it seems to me, and I don't know if you agree with me, that there just seem to be some books on YouTube that it's like a huge no to say anything negative about. And I
Yes.
feel this is one of them.
Yes.
Middlemarch is probably another one, but I've not read it yet. But it seems like like Middlemarch,
You
Pride
can't.
and Prejudice, they are like sacrosanct. You can't say anything negative about them. And I feel maybe this is in that group.
Well, since I have read Middlemarch and I've talked about it quite a bit on my channel, I've had several people tell me their critiques about it. So I've heard it, and Pride and Prejudice even, because you hear certain people just say, "I can't get into it. I can't get into the rhythm of the language of Austen's language," and so then they're just put it aside because they think it's boring. But there is the vibe. I think there is like the vibe that it sits. Like if you don't like it, there is something wrong with you. People are always like, I put aside Jane Austen. Don't judge me. And you're like, well, I am. So but yeah, Lonesome Dove is one of those where I feel like I was sitting in amongst other bookish people here on YouTube, and we were sitting in a chat, and I was the only one who hadn't read it, and everyone said it was great. Everyone in the chat, there was like 5 people. So I was like, yeah, if I don't like it, I'll be weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the good thing is, I suppose we did like it.
We did, yeah. We did.
I think,
indeed.
for me, it's important to kind of clarify that it was a 5-star reading experience for me.
Absolutely.
And I think that's partly, of course, due to reading it with you, because the book itself, I don't know on reflection if it's necessarily really a 5-star read. I kind of just marked it on the experience. Now, for me, I just want to clarify and say it's a wonderful book. It's excellent. It's
Oh no.
It's really great. But the more I thought about it, there are just some things that really kind of maybe rankled with me a little bit.
Have you put your finger on them yet?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
One of them's the length. The more I thought about it, now I think it suffers from either being too long or too short. It's either too long or not long enough. I don't think he found the right medium. I don't know if you felt when you finished it, you could have read on more. I did, because I felt that some things weren't necessarily tidied up or cleaned up, and I felt there were questions, and it kind of just ended, really.
Mm-hmm.
And I know he's written a sequel and he wrote prequels, but I don't know how far these were in his mind when he wrote it, or whether he felt also maybe afterwards that some things needed to be cleared up. But I do feel that in that respect, a lot of it could have been done in less pages.
Mm.
as he went, because there's a lot of repetition, really, when you think about it. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of the same things happen again and again, which, yeah,
Well,
kind of bothered me when it jumped out at me. I don't know.
yeah. I was going to say that I think I came at the same critique, but at a different angle. I think it suffered from being a part of a series because he didn't end up tying up some of the things that I think would have been really easy to really easy to tie up. Certain things that could have just been said and had a conversation about that would have ended little kind of rabbit trails or like character moments. Yeah, I mean, I felt like I could see him going on, continuing on writing more. Now, did he write this? I don't know about this. So, did he write this first, or did he have?
Yeah. This is the first one. He wrote this, and then all the others are either like prequels that he wrote after, or of course a sequel that he wrote.
Because one of the things that was nice about it was that it felt like there was this rich backstory, but that he didn't, leave you in the lurch, which would make sense because he wrote everyone to have this rich sort of history with each other. But I didn't feel like I missed out on anything. It was more that he didn't tie everything up that he could have tied up in the end. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, of course, as I say, if it was in his mind to like write this first and then go back, and maybe he had a lot of the legend and stuff written down already when he wrote Lonesome Dove, and he took that when he went back and wrote like Dead Man's Walk, the first one. But yeah, I felt that you certainly got the impression when reading it that there was like a rich like history between the characters for sure. Yeah, I have no problem with that. As I said, it's very difficult for me to be negative about it because it's 95% great.
Right. It is. It's
It
so
really is
good.
great. But I think the thing is, because so many people go on and on about how absolutely wonderful it is. I mean, it's not perfect. I mean, it's very hard to find, I guess, a perfect book, but I just don't think it is as superbly amazing and wonderful as everybody says it is.
Yeah.
But it is very, 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 very good.
So are you playing devil's advocate towards the booktube community about the book?
No. I actually genuinely feel this.
Okay.
Because it's one of those things like when I read the last lines, I'm like, okay, great, okay, close the book. I'm like, wow, what a roller coaster. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
Put it down. A bit later, I'm thinking, I don't know, we didn't, he didn't really say what happened with this particular thing, or and actually, what was the point of, and I'll mention this, but what was the point of Janie and Roscoe really in the end? The amount of time they're in it is like relatively quite short, actually.
Right.
And then I don't want to. Well, there are spoilers, so if you don't want to know anything that happens in I was going to say Gone with the Wind in Lonesome Dove, then now don't listen this part. But like, he kills off too many people. I think it's like he goes to this mass cull, and he kills off the wrong people, I think.
Well, yeah, because I didn't really particularly enjoy July Johnson from the start. I was like, he's whiny and sort of.
You said to me, you're like, yeah, I wouldn't mind if he gets scalped or if he gets.
I know, yeah. I was like, and then he's one that lives, and I was like, geez, well, okay. Because he was already, the way that he interacted with his wife was just like he was so in love with her, but there was just no real reason because she didn't like him like at all, and she never changes her mind about that. And then it's like, why did they do Roscoe and Janie? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in one sense, they were a bit of like part of the world, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know. If I think about it episodically, then it works a little bit better in my mind because sometimes you have someone enter for a few episodes and then they do exit, whether it be for this, that, or the other. But then I also consider it that I'm not a huge episodic, like I don't love fast-paced, plot-driven books that much. So I don't know why I like this one so much. Because I'm like with you, I really loved it. I really, really loved it. I would have no hesitation to like recommend it to somebody, or and for all kinds of readers. But then I'm like, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect book. It'll
Yeah,
break your heart.
it will break your heart. It will. I mean, the worst thing for me, of course, which I have a big thing about animals, right? I don't know
Oh
why.
yeah.
And I've downgraded books based on animal things before, right? Now there's a book, again, well, it's not maybe necessarily a spoiler, but there's a
Okay.
book that I really enjoyed last year, called Doomsday Book. It's a science
Mm.
fiction book about this girl who goes back in time, and she gets stuck during the time of the Black Death and all this kind of stuff. And I was thinking, this is a great book, right? And it ends with this kind of rescue mission. Now, whether or not it's successful, I mean, that's up to you if you read it. But there's been the Black Death, so almost everybody's been killed, right? And they keep
Mm.
talking about this poor cow that's walking around needing to be milked,
Mm.
and they leave it. The book ends with this poor cow left needing to be milked, and it really annoyed me. I know people are watching this thinking Mark is absolutely insane, and I thought to myself, well, I can't give it 5 stars because of that.
Wow.
It bothered me because it seemed like something like it seemed almost like a cruelty, even within the writing of it. Why did it have to be left like that? And I think part of it as well, is McMurtry when he kills off the pigs after they do all that
I
journey,
know.
I thought was horrific. So that left a slightly sour taste of bad bacon in my mouth.
Well, for you, it was the pigs, which I did get more and more attached to as we read on. But then I felt like he was just like with the horses. I don't know why that one really got me after a while, but I was like, man, you just like turn a horse over and is used as a shield, and then I'm like, oh my gosh, like what is like it was all the gore. It was the
Yeah,
gore with the horses.
yeah.
Sometimes it wasn't the gore with the people. It was like it was bloody and gruesome and sad, because it was like all of a sudden I'm like, well, that person is that horse is such a prominent character, and it goes with this character, this actual person character, and then all of a sudden it's like something was sort of surprising happened, and the first one to go was the horse, and I'm like, well, why?
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I suppose that, I mean, in many ways, joking aside, of course, it was a time where people were horrible and cruel to each other, so it's no surprise that they were pretty cruel and mean to animals as well.
Right.
But I did feel at times, there was something a little bit caricaturish about it all as well. Like a lot of the characters did seem kind of almost stereotypical. And I think, there were a
Yeah.
lot of cliche as well, and I think he can be held responsible for that because it's not an early enough Western, where we can say, oh, it's one of the early Westerns, he can be forgiven for that. It's not, he's writing
Mm-mm.
1980 or something, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he's grown up with all this and he's used it. And again, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is just kind of funny that, like, I guess the thing is, there is no originality in it at all.
Hmm.
It's a
Yeah.
very
Oh,
well
yeah.
told but well trodden path of a story, I think.
I don't know. I haven't read any westerns, so I don't know.
Well, I don't think it matters even if you read them. If you've watched any, like, I don't know, if you watched any westerns or if you watched or read any fantasy, I'm sure it's
Mhm.
the same thing.
Mhm.
It's almost like the quest, isn't it? It's got
Mhm.
this, they're going on this quest. I mean, it's a trope, for want of a better word, that's done well, but there's no originality to it at all as a book, I think.
No. And sometimes he loses the thread of why, like the reason why. I mean, at some point it just felt like, and I think that, the characters mentioned it too, but they're just going on a quest to go on a quest.
Well, that's it. There is no reason for it in the end. It's just one man's stubbornness or just weird idea that basically leads to the deaths of almost all his friends. Uh,
Right.
and he's just a real dick. Sorry, he is. I mean, there's almost
Yeah.
no redeeming feature in him. The whole point where he's supposed to like confess his particular relationship to one of the members of the crew, and he can't do it. That to me is, I know they go on about these people being, strong, silent types, these cowboys.
But they cried all the time,
They're
as you pointed
crybabies.
out.
That's it. Every single
All
one of
the
them is
time.
bursting into tears all the time. So
Yeah.
it's like they either have no emotion or they're like complete emotional wrecks, basically.
Yeah.
There's nothing in between. Like half of them are like crying their eyes out at every little thing that goes on.
Yeah.
So, it's it's kind of weird, really, isn't it?
It's like, but what, I don't know. I mean, I'm like, I think the things that everybody said about the book is true. You go on this more or less epic adventure where it's man versus the wild, man versus nature, which is a really incredible trope. But instead, you have men versus multiple nature times a million, because they're going on this like grunge, well, not even, it's like dangerous, life altering quest. And then, and then along the way you get certain villains also. So you have villains along this quest. And it's epic. Everything is epic. And I think for me, the storyline that worked the best was that of, if you follow Gus the whole way, then I think then it was successful. But if you can't buy into Gus, then I think you're going to hate the novel.
Well, it's an excellent point, because Gus is a wonderful literary creation. He's one of probably the greatest characters that I've read about in a modern work, and I'm taking 1980 as a modern work because it's still fairly modern, at least to me.
Yeah,
he's a wonderful, wonderful character.
Yeah.
Brilliantly done, and he's got what is he? He's like one of those rough diamonds, isn't he? He's got a heart of gold.
Oh my gosh.
He's a badass. He's amazing.
Gentleman, but not like, I mean, he's got this quippy sense of humor. And then, I mean, I think that when there's certain banter that he has coming out of his mouth with other characters, and I thought this banter is just incredible. Like, I could see how Larry McMurtry wrote, like, he's adapted some books into screenplays, and I was like, I can see that in his career, because he was just so talented at like this banter and this sort of like getting each other's goat a little bit, and knowing each other well, and having that feeling without ever like creating that feeling that these characters have with this long back history, without having to tell you that they had a long back history. Just by the way he interacted with certain people.
Well, I think that was the highlight, really, was the character interactions, the conversations they had, and even sometimes the conversations they didn't have. And I would also say, like, the humor was actually quite a nice surprise. It was good. So yeah, he was very, very, I mean, he's very skillful in a lot of, as I say, 95% of what he does. I think if this book wasn't held up all the time as like the greatest Western ever, or one of the best books ever written, I think I would have just let it all go. This is an amazing book, because it really is a good book. You get lost in a world. It really, I haven't felt for a long time actually being sucked into a world where I actually felt like I got to know some of these characters. I mean, we were talking about it a lot, how it was like we were catching up with old friends, that we were sitting around the campfire with them and stuff. And we both developed, I'm straight, but we both developed this crush on Gus.
Yeah. Like, if even the thought of like him walking up to me, I'm like, I'd blush. Oh my gosh. Yeah, oh. I know. I would just be like, oh my gosh, like, Gus, I know so much about you. Like, I've heard so much about you. Yeah. It's funny too, because I was just thinking in my mind that I think 4 people last year hailed it as like the best read of the year. And that surprises me a little bit, because even though it is good, it's not it's not going to be one of my. I mean, it's going to be maybe a top read, but not the top.
I think that's fair. I mean, unless there's some amazing things happening, I could see it slotting into top 5 of the year for sure. It was
Right.
it was great. As I said, the experience as well was enhanced by having it as a buddy read. I think as well. I
Hmm.
think I
Yeah.
don't know if I would have felt exactly the same just reading it on my own. And I'm not sure. At times I don't know the length. The length. A lot of people are put off by the length. They're like, "Oh my god, it's
It is
850
huge.
odd pages." Doesn't feel like it. I mean, I'm sure,
No.
like you probably agree with me that if we had nothing else on, we probably would
Hmm.
have read it in a week.
Hmm.
You
Oh
know,
yeah. Oh yeah.
uh,
Easily.
yeah, easily. It's a very very easy read, and I think I said to you, it kind of shocked me a little bit. I haven't read too many Pulitzer Prize winning works, but I kind of expected it to be maybe a little more challenging in its prose, but it's an
Hmm.
extremely easy read.
Hmm.
Maybe that's the success of it. Maybe that's it because anyone can pick it up and read it and not feel like, as long as you don't think, oh yeah, the size.
Right. Well, the same thing with Gone with the Wind. I think it's a very readable. It's very. I know you're reading it right now. I know. I know. They truly mismatched the actress for the movie because isn't Scarlett O'Hara the very first line? Scarlett O'Hara was not beautiful, and of course the actress that they have, what Vivian isn't it?
Vivian Lee, yeah,
Vivian Lee. Yeah, she's gorgeous.
she is
So
gorgeous, isn't she? I mean, although she probably doesn't look that good at the moment, but yeah, she
I
she
mean,
was definitely
when
gorgeous.
she played Scarlett, she was
Yeah, you're right.
stunning.
Yeah,
I mean, just stunning. But the writing in Gone with the Wind, and I feel like even the most recent co-winner, the writing in Demon Copperhead, it's not challenging. It's not a challenging work. It just tells a really good story.
yeah.
So I think it has a history of the Pulitzer. I think depending on who you have, um, will sometimes choose storytelling over maybe a precise language choice or something like that.
Well, I mean, I know you are much more down on these, with these prizes and things than I am for sure. I mean, the only things I've really come into contact with before a few like Man Booker Prize books, and often, a lot of them sometimes could be a chore to get through. They would be maybe like experimental or written in such a way, and I'd be like,
Mhm.
I wouldn't get into it. So I guess maybe I expected that. But again, that's not a negative. It's wonderful that it's accessible. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I'd much rather read 850 pages as it is than perhaps maybe someone like, Cormac McCarthy or something, maybe,
Oh,
which
absolutely.
would maybe be as pleasant an experience. Let's just have a quick look at some of the comments. Oh, hey, Courtney. I don't know if you're still here. Happy 4th of July to you as well.
Mhm.
Um, BJ says they have no desire to read Lonesome Dove, don't like heartbreakers or animal abuse. Well, yeah, then probably you wouldn't like it. I mean, I don't like that stuff either, but it's still a good book despite
It is. It is.
that.
And the heartbreak is like well deserved, I think. Like he does do the work to make you love the characters before he just,
Yeah,
slaughters you. So,
it's really, really a knife through the heart, isn't it? Stanley Kubrick once said that everything has already been done, every story has been told, every scene has been shot. It's the job of the writer or director to do it one better. Yeah, and I think I can, be fair to McMurtry and say that he did that. He did take a well-worn, well-traveled road and, improve on it slightly,
mhm.
although not perfect it.
No.
Cameron's journey, the animals, horses, pigs, although they held them in high esteem, an integral part of lives, they were also there for survival. I think that's true, and I think that comes across because they do
Yes,
have, good relationships with their animals. But
they do.
like with the horses, they are also disposable when needs be. You know,
Mhm. In a
so
life and death situation, the horse goes.
yeah, yeah. You also brought to my mind what it took to settle the West. Well, that's it. I mean, the hardships are just unimaginable. I mean, it's amazing to me that there's actually anybody living in the western part of the United States at the moment, anyway. Because, I think I said to you, quite early on, at least if I didn't say it, I certainly thought about saying it to you, that it brought to mind this film, A Million Ways to Die in the West, which
Oh
was
yes.
by the guy who did A Family Guy.
Mm.
He's in it, and it is just this mixtape of just like people being killed of every crazy imaginable way possible. It's a western, but it's a comedy western. And it doesn't sound like it, but sometimes it did feel a bit like that, because it's like, just crossing the river slaughtered
Yeah. Oh, I
somebody.
know.
I mean, it was like, so,
And then it was like exemplified by what Jasper's deep fear of the river, and to begin with. So you have somebody who's like already frightened and like dreading it, and yeah, it was great. It was great though.
yeah, no, it was good. I did feel a little bit. I mean, I don't know your thoughts about representation of maybe minority characters in it. I know this is something people talk about a lot these days, of course. I mean, bear in mind, of course, it's 1980 again, so that in some ways that is still before a lot of the political correctness we have. I mean, it's interesting that one of the main characters of the outfit was an African American, which is good. I mean, there are two African Americans in it. One was a good guy, one was a bad guy. So
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Also, the Native Americans. There's not really any positive there. They're either brutal killers, or they're dirt poor and scavenging or stealing or that kind of stuff. And the Mexicans, either bad guys or
Really good
untrustworthy,
cooks.
or
Good
cooks.
cooks. Yeah.
They're cooks, but they're untrustworthy, or there's something dodgy about even the second one, Poe Camper, who
Yeah.
he's he still murdered his wife, right? So,
Yeah.
and he has no compunction. Yeah, I killed her. Oh, all right, okay, fine. So
Everyone though, most of the characters had, well, I mean, yeah, though there was a flatness to, even though it might have had diverse representation, there was sort of a flatness to those characters. Whereas the white male, well, and female characters, all the white characters, all the Caucasian characters were very like nuanced and dynamic and cried, but then also could like, muscle up and wrangle the, cattle, and had different feelings for different people. But I didn't walk away feeling like those characters were shorted. I guess in the Native Americans were definitely like the worst, they're sort of the worst represented, because yeah, they were kind of like savage or just just not the best. But anyways, what were you
yeah,
gonna
it's
say?
true. But I mean, I guess it's interesting that while he was happy to shoot them at any given moment, Gus especially had a sympathy for them.
Yeah.
And I did think it was interesting the whole time they kept banging on about the decreasing population of buffalo. And I don't know, I wonder if that's just like a 20th century person looking back and thinking that, or whether these cowboys themselves would have noticed it, or really would have remarked on it. I suppose they probably would have done, because it might have been something they had been used to seeing. It is, yeah, it's I feel unkind by saying some of the things I've said about it, and I certainly don't want to put anyone off reading it, because I do think it's a fantastic book, but I just think it needs knocking down a peg or two from the pedestal that it's been put on.
Well, if you set yourself that mission, I'm sure you can accomplish it.
Well, someone asked me the other day, which was better, True Grit or Lonesome Dove? Now, it's difficult to say because they're both excellent, but I did say if you put a gun to my head, as a book on its own, I would have gone with True Grit.
I haven't read True Grit, so I don't know.
You should actually read it. It is very good. I mean, for one thing, it is like only that big as well, you know. So,
Oh.
um, but I think I don't know. I just felt it's very hard to you know express exactly why I would choose True Grit. I think it's more like a reaction.
Oh.
I don't know. I don't know. I think Portis does so much with so little, whereas McMurtry gives himself so much, and I think he could have done more. I just feel that there was perhaps a few things he could have done differently or better. But if I was grading it as a teacher, it's it's still an A, just not an A plus.
Yes, and I really do. I really keep on going back to the fact that there are things that weren't tied up, and there was moments where I felt like it just would have taken a teeny bit to make that character really grow, which is what I love to see. I love like growth in a character. I mean, some people got the short end of the stick, so certain women in the book that I was just like, but I wanted to see Call grow a little bit, and I felt like that we didn't see that in certain ways, and in that way, it was a little bit disappointing, I guess. And not disappointing like boo-hoo, but like disappointing like maybe I will read the next book, but then I know I don't really want to. That's also a thing. That's another thing that I measure a book by too, which I didn't really think about, is how much do I want to read another book by this author? And not really.
Well, it's hard, isn't it, when you know that this is regarded as their masterpiece. This is their best work. This is not going to get any better, and you read it.
True.
So, although Summer from Sterling Reed said to me, she said that her favorite of the books in the series, I don't know if she's listening. Probably she would have probably said hello if she was. I think she said it was Comanche Moon, which I don't know if that's the second one or the last one. I can't remember the order.
The second one is The Streets of Laredo.
Okay, so it's maybe the last one. Mm-hmm. Unless Streets of Laredo was her favorite. Doesn't matter. But it wasn't Lonesome Dove. Anyway, that wasn't her favorite of the books, which I found interesting. And actually, one of my favorite moments in the book actually did involve Cool, and it was the dealing with the army scout in the town.
Oh,
and I liked
that.
I found that very moving as well, because when of course, his motivation, for doing it, it was nice to see a little bit of humanity in him, or at least some kind of emotion from him. But even then, he's psychotic in it. He can't be normal about it. He just completely sees red, and he can't hear anybody, and even Dustin would shoot me if he, if he got the chance. So.
That was a good moment too, because they had talked about what kind of fighting style Call had, and we didn't really see it until that moment, and then you're like, whoa, okay.
You don't want to mess with him, for sure.
No.
No.
But yeah.
But there were, there were just some, I don't know, maybe unrealistic things. I did find the incident with Jake a bit unrealistic. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was strange.
Whatever your morals are in life, you gotta be really, really hard-hearted to have done what they did there. I don't know.
Yeah, they were like, and they knew that he just fell in with the wrong crowd, and that he was susceptible to this kind of behavior. So I'm like, what in the world? That's just. I was like, wow, okay, we're going
all the way up. I thought they were just going to scare him.
Same, I
didn't expect that to actually happen, but I mean, he does it himself, I suppose.
Yeah, so, that's true. But they set it up. I mean, it's just like,
Let's see what some of the comments have got. Hi, everyone, just coming on. Hope I didn't miss too
Hi,
much. Can't wait to
Carol.
get. Well, if you can't wait to get to Lonesome Dove, it's probably good you missed the first part of what I was talking about anyway.
Yeah.
Hi, Bill. Good to see you. Sean, I have read a few contemporary accounts of some lamenting the disappearance of Buffalo. Okay, well, that's cool.
Okay.
For Sean, Oxbow incident is better than True Grit. Okay, I haven't read that one yet. So
Me either.
my problem with Lonesome Dove is it doesn't tickle my brain like a good science fiction book will.
Yeah.
Chris, actually, it's funny you say that because I almost bought it because I read Stoner and I really loved it, and I got Augustus. And I thought, oh, I'll get Butcher's Crossing. And then I was reading about it, and it said the depiction of buffalo hunting and the slaughter of the buffalo is really graphic. And I said, no, I'm not going to read it. So, you know, yeah, I don't like it when it's. I know if it's part of a story, but still, it's just I have a problem with this kind of animal stuff, you know. So, so yeah, I don't know. Is there anything else you want to say about Lonesome Dove?
No, I'm walking away with. I think again, my favorite part was just meeting Gus and spending time with Gus. Yeah, and I really enjoyed. I mean, yeah, it was sort of like returning to an old friend. I feel like we've gone on about the things that we didn't like about it, but yeah, it really did have this sort of sweet feel about the whole thing. That like Larry McMurtry enjoyed the world that he was creating, even if it was harsh. But I do feel like he felt like he was the god of the creation of the world, and so he got to do what he wanted with it. And I think that maybe that was his downfall.
Destroy it mercilessly. Well, I mean, yeah, Gus was a great character. Newt was a sympathetic character.
No, he's so great.
Sweet boy.
I love Lorena.
Clara was a great character. Lorena, I had mixed feelings about, I have to say. I don't know.
Okay, I liked her.
Yeah, I liked her generally. I don't know. I thought she was a bit kind of maybe. I mean, she did undergo, of course, a terrible trauma, so that might have been part of the shift in the way she was. But well, no, it wasn't, because she was always kind of. It's funny how she kind of just looked down on a lot of the cowboys, though, as well.
Yeah,
I felt a bit sorry for Dish because he
loved her so much.
I know, but she didn't even give him the time of day,
No,
and
she didn't.
yeah, it's kind of.
But then I thought it was telling because she was very, very young. Like even Clara was like, she's so young. She could be one of my daughters. So then I was like, maybe that had something to do with her immaturity.
Well, I did again. I often thought of that stupid film, Million Ways to Die in the West, because this character in that who's in love with this prostitute, and he's engaged to be married to her, and she won't sleep with him because she doesn't believe in before marriage. But all the while she's sleeping, of course, as a business. Yeah, so it's like he has to sit and listen to all this stuff when he's visiting, and it's completely madcap. But yeah, I kind of got that feeling a little bit with
so. Absolutely. Yeah, she had her own agenda, but in some ways I really liked that. So
yeah, and that's it. I was left thinking, what happened to them all? Really?
Yeah.
Did she ever make it to San Francisco?
I'm hoping that she stayed. I'm hoping that she stayed with Clara.
Well, to be honest, it was probably good for the remaining characters. The book ended when it did, because McMurtry probably would have had them all killed in an Indian raid or an outbreak of typhus.
I know. No, it would be all of the things. It would be all of the things. They would start off with the Indian raid, and then those that survived would develop typhus, and then they would die. Like, and they would die at the end.
It's literally like the book ends because there are just literally no more characters left.
I know. They're like, and then it closes with like the sun setting, and then
every single person in the book is dead. So
yeah. Oh.
Although Captain Cool and Gus were not romantically involved, they were partners, opposite Love, Gus, and not love. Cool. Yeah, I see that. But actually, it's interesting you say that, Kamix, because my book's a bit outdated here. You got the same one, but Murch
I
is
do,
still
yeah.
alive when this was, when it's printed, because they say he lives in wherever. But his other works include 3 essay collections, 5 memoirs, and more than 40 screenplays, including the co-authorship of Brokeback Mountain, which I haven't
Oh,
seen, but I believe it is a homoerotic story of cowboys, isn't it?
yes,
Maybe even
the
more
book
so.
is.
So that's kind of interesting, that maybe, um, there's some inspiration from that. I don't know.
Well, and I felt like Call was the most loyal to Gus, and treated him like a partner, even if non-romantic.
Yeah, I mean that show, but again, his stupidity and stubbornness, like even with the transportation of the body and everything.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, it's a weird one, but you know, final words: read it or don't read it, Shelley.
If you're, I'm always like qualifying it though. I'm like, if you really want a good adventure story and are curious about westerns, then I would definitely highly recommend it. But if you're not really into that kind of thing, I don't know if I would recommend it to you.
But you didn't know necessarily if you were into that kind of thing because it was your first Western, right?
But I do love adventure stories. Yeah. And I think for the most part, I would say read it,
Yeah,
you know.
I would as
Yeah.
well. I mean,
Very few people would I say, maybe not.
well, I think the thing is, you're not worse off from having read it, and
No,
you don't lose the time by having read it. It's not like it's a waste of your time. It is a good book, worth
it
worth
really is.
worth the effort.
Yeah. Oh
Super.
yeah. And very readable. Doesn't take, you know what? Maybe I'll amend it. Maybe I'll say if you want a good summer read, just read it.
Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go. Yeah.
A friend of mine actually, who I've connected with recently. We went to school together, and he, we chatted back and forth a bit on Twitter now and then, and he recently found me, and he found out I had this channel, and he started watching it. He became very interested in getting back into reading, and he asked me, at the end of last month, the end of May, what I'd be reading in June, and I told him, there's this whole June on the Range. I'll be reading westerns. This is what I'll be reading, and he read some of them. He was really hooked. He read True Grit. He said it's amazing. He read this, read that.
Ah, that's
And then
great.
he wanted to read something else, and because he wasn't sure about tackling Lonesome Dove yet, 800 and something pages. But he wrote to me and said, "Yeah, I got it on Kindle. I'm reading it, and I can't put it down." He said,
Right.
"I could. I'm about like 100th of the way through the book, but I could go on forever. This is an amazing story." Yeah. So, and I think that's the interesting thing. If it's something that if you haven't read much of it, this kind of thing, then I think it will be a great introduction. It will also be a wonderful experience. And even if you have, it's still very enjoyable. But I
Yeah.
think that if you've read other Westerns, you can probably say that there are some out there that might just be, but then of course it's subjective, but maybe a bit better. And sure.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, intro. Yeah, it really, yeah, it was such a good adventure. It's hard to fault it for that. Um, so I think that if you're going in with the right purpose, you're just gonna love it. You're gonna just have such a great time. Like reading it for June on the Range was perfect.
yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a book that can appeal on many levels to many different types of readers.
Mm-hmm.
That's obviously a positive.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
moving on, Lonesome Dove's behind us now. I don't know how you're doing for time, but I'm just curious what you're reading at the moment.
I am reading a really I'm reading a sort of it's this book called My Best Friend's Exorcist, and it's by Grady Hendrix. And Grady Hendrix is a Southern writer, highly influenced by Stephen King. So it's almost like this wild romp of a thing where you're just like, these girls meet, and it's set in the 80s. And so it feels like the television show Stranger Things in a book form. So it's like cue the cheesy music, and
A
these girls become
montage.
oh yeah, no, there is like a montage. There's like a straight up montage section of like, because the girls meet at like 10 years old, and he's trying to fast forward you to when they're like 16 or something. So there is a straight up, he's like, in 7th grade this is what happened, in 8th grade this is what happened, in 9th grade. And it's just it's like the best of an 80s film, and it's so much fun, and it's set in essentially my area is set in Charleston. And so, and you get the sense that he really knows the area pretty well, so it doesn't feel fake or put on. So I'm reading that, and then I'm reading a couple of books for the BookTube Prize, and I'm reading a epic fantasy, The Priory of the Orange Tree, as well.
Oh,
So,
I've heard about that. Yeah, it's massive though, isn't it? I mean, it's like,
well, actually, it's shorter than Lonesome Dove.
oh, okay.
But it's printed the way that it's printed. I don't have it with me. The way that it's printed to be huge, and I think it's a marketing tactic. It's like massive. I think it's a marketing tactic because some people want those big epic fantasies to sink into. But if you look at the page count and you look at the font size and you look at the margin size, it's very generous, very, very generous.
Oh, okay.
I think it could have been like 500 pages.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Well, it's nice. It's nice when you get to, when you enjoy everything you're reading. I mentioned, of course, I'm reading Gone with the Wind, but I'm also reading. I don't have it with me. I have the second book with me, which is The Avenue Goes to War. I'm reading the first book, which is A Dreaming Suburb, and I'm around 250 pages into that, and I'm really enjoying it. It's one of these family kind of sagas. It's set in London after the First World War and before the Second World War, and it's got some great characters. Although I was speaking with Sean about it earlier because he's read it, I just had a slight problem because the characters, some of them, there's an Esther, an Edith, an Esme, and Edgar, a Eustace, all these characters that begin with E as their name, and sometimes I'm like, now which one's Elaine? Elaine, Edith, Esther. But
Yeah.
apart from that, it's excellent. I have to say he's a fantastic writer. And the third thing I'm reading is actually a non-fiction, and it's part of Carrie, Very Literary Carrie's Black Hearts book club, which is a book called Close to Shore. And it's about the 1916 shark attacks off the east coast of America, and that's very readable, I have to say. I'm in the Czech Republic, and it's a landlocked country, so I'm not in any danger, immediate danger of running into any sharks. So I think I'm not sure I'd take it to the beach to read with me.
Sure. No, I live like 20 minutes away from the beach, but I only see the ocean like once a year, so I just don't go very often. So yeah.
Have you read Jaws?
No.
No, I haven't either. It's one of those I keep thinking I should get to someday.
I don't know.
The interesting thing was, because I remember being upset. I don't know if it's Jaws 1 or Jaws 2. You've seen the films, I take it. Is when, of course, one of the dogs gets eaten.
Oh yes, that's the worst. That's the worst.
Well, reading this book, the first victim, he goes swimming. Sorry, I have to just grab Elvis because he's destroying something. Come here, Elvis. Oh, sorry, not very professional. He's got a rabbit that he's now decided to remove all the stuffing from. So, but
no one claims to be professional here. What are you talking?
The first victim, he jumps in the water, and this dog joins him. This big kind of American style retriever. I forget the name of it. And he swims out, and the dog kind of just, it's not his dog, it's just a random dog that's at the resort that's like joining him. And it was really interesting because the author's like, well, it the it's almost like in a lot of shark attack instances, dogs have been involved, but the dogs have not ended up the victims.
Oh,
And it's something
that's
to do
good.
apparently. Well, it's something apparently to do with like the shark senses more the erratic rhythm of the dog swimming that
Mhm.
attracts it. But of course, the human is the bigger target. So basically, the lesson I kind of felt from it was don't go swimming with your dog, because that seems to be, maybe the danger. Yeah. So he has this rabbit.
Mhm.
He's just now ripped into the.
Oh, poor baby.
Yeah, he looks very happy
Oh,
with himself over it.
yeah. My Harry does that too. He'll get nice little hole and he'll start picking out all the stuff, and you're like, why? And then he seems very proud of it. He's just like, this is what I did for you, Mom. And I'm like, a huge mess. Lovely.
Oh, it's such a
Oh,
shame though, because it's a cute little toy, and now it's like
yeah.
probably beyond repair. Yeah, I
Oh,
know. I know. What have we got here? Alan, thanks to the union. Yeah, you're welcome.
yeah.
Best of an 80s film. Good to set the bar low.
But no, but like it's probably it's better to do it that way, because I was thinking I could probably read these for Garb August, since I am hosting, though I haven't said a peep about it on my channel yet, and everyone else is putting up their announcement videos. I've just been quite busy, but I was thinking that this is a way that I could enjoy it, because if you look at Grady Hendrix's books, like if you some of them are made to look like horrible 80s 80s like pulp fiction novels. So they're almost made as like like as a play on it, but they're of course more modern. And but I just loved it. I was like, all of a sudden I'm like, yes, give me all the hairspray and like the thick makeup and the you know all of it. Yeah.
I feel I
So
know this name though, Grady Hendrix. Has he written like?
yeah, there's a comment. I don't know how to put the comments up, but the next comment was from Cheryl, and she says, "Shelley, have you read the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which is by the same author?"
Oh, okay.
And he also wrote Horror Store, which is a horror set in an IKEA.
Maybe because it wasn't that long ago, maybe, and people were talking about it probably quite a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, quite. I mean, maybe like a decade ago, like in
Oh,
20, maybe 10 years ago. And then he also has a couple of others, but I think it's like if you like him, you really like him.
uh-huh,
But if you
uh-huh.
don't like him, you don't talk about him. Like you just that's it. But no, I haven't read it. This is my first Grady Hendrix, but I'm enjoying the sort of cheesy romp that it is. It's so cheesy. It's so cheesy.
That sounds
So yeah.
perfect for Garb August then.
Yeah, it's great. Especially since I'm not very serious about my trash, and I'm hosting with a lot of people who are very serious about their trash. So yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's another one of his books,
Uh,
Paperbacks from Hell.
mhm.
Mhm.
And Bill's asking you, I doubt not me, whether he should read The Priory of the Orange Tree. He said Priory of the Orange Tree. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what you like, Bill. It's a epic fantasy written for adults that has all these continents, and each continent has its own sort of characteristics, and there's like 5 storylines. Truly, it's a lot to pay attention to, but a lot of fun
And are you
nonetheless.
quite a big fantasy reader generally, or?
No, but I don't think it's for someone who doesn't read any fantasy. But I do read. You know what? I say no, but I've read a good deal. I've read a good deal of it.
I
I
haven't.
know I know I'm like, if you're a fantasy reader, um, but then I'm not a huge fantasy reader and I'm reading it. But there have been times, I mean, I have gone through my spurts of really enjoying like a whole fantasy series, and then, going at it kind of like getting into a series and reading the whole thing, and then, getting off of it for a while. So,
Yeah, I
Yeah.
haven't read that much fantasy. It's one of those things I kind of feel a little bit jealous of, because you see all these people around who reads. It's like the science fiction thing, Sean and all his crew who love these science fiction books, and it seems to like have a whole wonderful like
Yeah.
keep them all occupied with hundreds and hundreds of different things. I don't know. I've read some good ones, but it's never one I've jumped right into. And fantasy is the same thing.
Yeah.
I'd rather read something real, like, I don't know, like if you were to read, there's a wonderful trilogy of history books written by John Julius Norwich about the rise and fall of Byzantium. Yeah.
Hmm.
And, the whole ending of that, the whole siege and the fall of Constantinople, is like Tolkien took that and said, okay, I'm taking this and I'm putting it into Lord of the Rings, and this is going to be Helm's Deep. And yet, when you read it in the history book, it was real, right? It happened.
Right.
That's more magical. There's like these, people involved in the siege and fighting or whatever for Constantinople was far, far more exciting and amazing than anything people can imagine, right? So yeah,
Right.
there's a question for you there.
Oh, well, I have read Piranesi. It was one of my favorite books of last year, Alan, and I actually would recommend Piranesi because it's much shorter, much more to the point. I would recommend that more to people who don't read fantasy because it's just a one-off, and I think she's Susanna Clark's only written 2 books so far, has had 2 books published, and so I don't think she's writing so much to a specific fantasy audience. I think she's trying to just write books that she wants to read or what she wants to say on the page. So it's a little bit different. Yeah.
I haven't read her, but that's no surprise, I suppose.
All right. I know I'm getting all these fantasy questions, but I'm like, I'm no expert though.
And
Yeah.
you mentioned you're reading a couple of things for the BookTube Prize. Now, obviously, you can't probably mention them, but are they're nonfiction you're doing, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm early in on the 2 that I started, one of which is called Half American, and it's about the Black Americans that served in World War II, both here and overseas. And I'm about 50 pages in of 300, and it's about essentially the the laws that were quite unfair to the Black Americans, with segregation being so big, and certain blacks not being able to join black Americans not being able to join the Air Force, and in certain areas of the U.S. And yet so much money was being poured into it because of World War II, and the only people who could take advantage of that training was white Americans. So there's a lot about the laws and sort of what was going on in that time of history, rather. And then the other one is The Fourth Time We Drowned, which is about the Libyan refugee crisis, the refugee crisis in Libya. And a reporter, she's an Irish reporter, but she got connected, well, rather refugees connected to her, and they started sending her videos and like long emails through WhatsApp, and they would and I'm very early on into that one as well, but I'm listening to that one, and she uses the real audio from the refugees when they send voice memos to her.
Goodness.
To tell her what's going on. So it's really kind of interesting, and that's like almost like shedding light on a very current humanitarian crisis right now. Yeah, both are, I feel lucky because I feel like all of my books have been really interesting. So,
because the 2 you mentioned while we were reading Lonesome Dove sounded fascinating as well. So I was thinking, I'm quite lucky that you've been given such interesting books to read.
Yeah, I know I finished The Facemaker, which was about the advances in plastic surgery during World War I. So yeah, they've all been, they haven't been boring in the least. So yeah.
I do like it though when you get some nonfiction that's on something that seems like it would be dull, and it totally isn't.
No, right. I
I mean,
know.
I remember, like, years ago. There's a guy called Mark Kurlansky, I think, and
Hmm.
he wrote like a history of salt or something like that, I
Oh
think, or
yes, I know about that book. Hmm.
yeah. And that's brilliant. These kind of things
Yeah,
are so brilliant because it sounds like it's so mundane, but actually no, it's really exciting. You
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I should actually probably get going.
Yes, get back to your family on this day of independence. And
I
have you anything
know.
planned for later, or
No, no.
just going to see what
We're like,
happens?
we're like the most un-American. And we'll hear fireworks. We'll hear fireworks in the middle of the night. That's about it.
And your dog's
Gosh,
okay with fireworks, or
I don't. Yeah, I don't. He hasn't tended to be fussed about it. Yeah, he gets more in a tizzy with birds and squirrels that, are in our yard. He will just act like they are taking over his space and that you are just tormenting him with their presence on our lawn. But yeah, and then fireworks go off and he's like, "What? Just another day in the Swearingen household." Probably because he's
Fi-
around the kids and
fireworks
stuff.
going off? Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah. So, but
all
well,
right. Well,
thanks for having me, and I
it's a
really
pleasure.
enjoyed. Yeah, it was so great reading Lonesome Dove with you and having this conversation. It was yeah. Maybe I'm going to be one of those people that's going to further it on the pedestal while you're just trying to tear it down. I'll be like, and it was just so
Oh no!
good.
See, that's the one thing
No, I'm just kidding.
I know, but it's the one impression I didn't want to leave is anyone thinking I didn't like it or didn't enjoy it. As I said, it's a
No,
95%
I know you did. I know you
out of 100.
did.
It's 95 out of 100 for me. Really, it's a
Yeah, but
5-star
it's. Oh
experience.
yeah. Oh, absolutely. I know.
But I
I know.
think
I know.
it drops a couple of marks here and there. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, and I don't disagree. So, anyways. All right. Well.
All right,
All right.
everybody. So thank you ever so much for watching. Enjoy
Yeah.
your bank holiday. Well, it is a bank holiday. Enjoy your Independence Day holiday day. And those of you who are not, I was going to say, lucky enough to be American, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye.